take a little longer.
Just have no idea how this one will end.
This is an embarrassment to our country. Frankly, we did win this election.
That is factually inaccurate.
There's still so much that is uncertain.
So settle in.
Good evening, Shippensburg. I'm Adam Beam, and welcome back to Race for the White House. Today is Tuesday, January 23rd, and we are in the heat of the New Hampshire primaries, the first primaries of the 2024 presidential election. And what a week of build-up it has been. Let's take a look here at some of the biggest news before we get into tonight's results. Obviously, the biggest shakeup comes from the Republican Party. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis dropped out of the race on Sunday, just 2 days before the New Hampshire primaries. The announcement was made in a video posted to X. Here's some of what Governor DeSantis had to say.
I am today suspending my campaign. I'm proud to have delivered on 100% of my promises, and I will not stop now. It's clear to me that a majority of Republican primary voters want to give Donald Trump another chance. They watch his presidency get stymied by relentless resistance, and they see Democrats using lawfare this day to attack him. Well, I've had disagreements with Donald Trump, such as on the coronavirus pandemic and his elevation of Anthony Fauci. Trump is superior to the current incumbent, Joe Biden. That is clear. I signed a pledge to support the Republican nominee, and I will honor that pledge.
It should be noted that the DeSantis campaign spent an estimated $100 million, and that Ron DeSantis also revealed in that video he will back Donald Trump as the party's candidate. This also comes just a week after Vivek Ramaswamy suspended his presidential run after a disappointing turnout in Iowa. But perhaps his support was well placed. SUTV can project Donald Trump is the winner of the New Hampshire Republican primaries. But it was not quite the victory he saw last week in Iowa. There, he was dominating over his fellow candidates, but tonight, Nikki Haley put up quite a fight, and while votes are still being counted, as you can see, the percentage there isn't too high, margins are still quite narrow. But as you can see, Nikki Haley has been putting all of her energy into New Hampshire. She has been seeing good numbers going into tonight based on early polling, and while it was not a win for her, it shows that she is still in the race. She talked earlier at her HQ. Let's hear what she had to say.
I want to congratulate Donald Trump on his victory tonight. He earned it, and I want to acknowledge that. Now, you've all heard the chatter among the political class. They're falling all over themselves, saying this race is over. Well, I have news for all of them. New Hampshire is first in the nation. It is not the last in the nation. This race is far from over.
Now, Nikki Haley has obviously been one of the stronger opponents to the former president since she first appeared on the campaign stage, making quite an impression during the first couple GOP debates, being one of the more moderate candidates on the ticket. However, we have seen her campaign take quite a few hits over the past 2 weeks or so. We had that less than stellar performance in the GOP debate with Ron DeSantis. We also saw that she took third in the Iowa caucuses. However, those margins were quite close, and it was not a massive loss for her against Ron DeSantis. But obviously, the biggest hit to her going into New Hampshire was her refusal to take part in any debate appearances unless the former president also made an appearance. Obviously, Donald Trump has made it a massive part of his campaign to avoid any and all GOP debates leading up to these caucuses and primaries. And as candidates have dropped off the ballot, clearly it has worked out for the Trump campaign. But again, Nikki Haley is not out of the race just yet. She is still planning on fighting out these next couple states as we move forward into the election, and we could possibly see a turnaround. Now, we also have to wonder if DeSantis dropping out of the race so close to these primaries, we really need to stop and think how many of the supporters have turned to Donald Trump and how many have turned to Nikki Haley. Again, it is still too early to really determine how many of those votes that were going to be cast for Ron DeSantis would turn to Haley and how many of them would turn to the former president. However, given the fact that the Florida governor has supported the former president and will be backing him as the Republican nominee, as well as being much more in line with his beliefs, it is safe to assume that Ron DeSantis dropping out gave the former president quite the big bump in the lead. But again, we are seeing some very narrow margins here in New Hampshire. Let's take a look here now at our electoral map. We are going to send it over there, and we are going to see what the early polling is looking like for the presidential election. Again, this is based solely off of if Donald Trump and Joe Biden, who are currently the favors for both of their parties, are the nominees. Let's take a look here at the map. All right, so here we are now at the SUTV electoral map. Now, obviously, we are seeing lots of reds, lots of blues, lots of yellows. However, these are not based off of the results of the caucuses or the primaries. Those do not determine the outcome of the presidential election. No. This map is drastically going to change here as November gets closer. These are simply based on early polling numbers. And again, this is also based off of if we see a Joe Biden-Donald Trump rematch. Now, obviously, a lot can change. Former President Trump is facing some serious legal battles at the time that may determine his eligibility to even be the Republican nominee if he is elected. Obviously, he is the front runner as well as Joe Biden for the Democrats. So based off of what we know right now and based off, again, those early polling numbers, this is what we are speculating the map is going to look like as we get closer to November. But again, things can change. Let's take a look here at some of these striped states. In particular, I want to talk about Florida. Now, these states are striped because most likely they will go to whatever party they are represented at the time. However, it doesn't mean they're guaranteed. They could flip-flop, as we've seen in past elections. Florida is an interesting case because it has mainly been going red these past couple years, but I do feel that Florida has kind of shrunk in its importance when it comes to determining the presidential nominee. Obviously, in 2000 with George W. Bush and Al Gore, we saw some serious shakeups and controversies there in the state of Florida. It was the one that ultimately won George W. Bush his presidency, and obviously it took a month to find out the results of said election. Hopefully that is not how things go in 2024, but we would just have to wait and see how this election turns out, as terrifying as that may be. But let's really take a look here. But like I said, Florida is definitely an interesting case because I do not believe it has as much importance in the election as a lot of people would think. The biggest states we have to focus on here are these yellow states. These are states where it is simply too early to call, too early to predict what the outcome is going to be. They're up in the air. They are swing states, similar to Florida, but these states have really become the crucial ones to hit when it comes to presidential elections. In particular, Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania was the ultimate state that decided Joe Biden's victory as the president in 2020. So I believe that both candidates are definitely going to be focusing a lot of their efforts on this state as well. I would not be surprised if Pennsylvania was the state that determined the election. But again, a lot can change till November. We will just have to wait and see. But let's take a look here at some of these other states. Nevada and Arizona, both of these states over here flipped for Joe Biden as well in 2020. And that is, again, these are the states that really helped Joe Biden there. They took a while to call, but eventually they both went blue. But again, things could change. Early polling is indicating that Donald Trump is polling more favorably than Joe Biden. However, we don't know exactly where some of those states are that he is polling better at. And if Donald Trump is able to flip these states, well, then that would absolutely secure a Republican victory. Even if he were to secure Nevada and New Mexico and Georgia, those states, if they were to turn red, would almost guarantee Donald Trump a win once he has Florida, even if Joe Biden was able to get Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. But again, this map, I have to emphasize for everybody watching at home, this map is purely based on early polling, and those numbers can change at any time. So we will just have to wait and see come November what it is going to look like. But that is going to do it for Race for the White House tonight. I am Adam Beam. Thank you all for tuning in, and I hope to see everybody next time as we continue our coverage of the 2024 presidential election. Good night.